How's it going, guys? My name is Zach with the Movie Castle, and today we're going to be taking a look at Stranger Things: The Other Side. This is the first graphic novel for Stranger Things published by Dark Horse Comics. They did two other graphic novels, and that's Six and Into the Fire, both of which I have reviews for on the channel. Then they've also done some kids graphic novels, the Zombie Boys and the Bully, I believe. But this was the first one they did right here. I have the trade paperback with all 4 issues in it, and this is the story of what happened to Will in the Upside Down during Season 1. I guess show you guys the back there, and then first things first. Oh, media tie-in as a genre, that's cool. Title page where he's hiding in the cemetery. Make sure you guys are in focus. And then credit where credit is due. The writing by Jody Houser, pencils by Stefano Martino, inks by Kenneth Champagne, letters by Lauren Aff, colors by Lauren Aff, lettering by Nate Pecos of Blambot, and front cover art by Alexis Bricklot. And you can see Will at the pool where Barb was killed in this front cover illustration. So that's pretty cool. Pretty cool scene there. Now we're going to go ahead and talk a little bit about the plot of this graphic novel. Now, here's the part where I normally say no spoilers, and it's kind of a weird case for this one because if you've seen Season 1 of the show, you know basically what's going to happen. There are a few good surprises, and I'll try to avoid them, and I won't cover the end, so I guess technically still no spoilers, but if you've seen Season 1, I think you know how this all plays out, which something I guess we'll cover in the review itself. But let's just jump right into it. No spoilers, but take a look at the story. So it opens up with a scene you've seen before in Stranger Things. You get Will Byers running in the real world from the Demogorgon, and you get some yellow narration talking about what he's doing, and we'll get to that in a bit. He grabs the gun just as he's pulled into the Upside Down, which allows him to scare off the Demogorgon, and now Will Byers is walking around in the Upside Down. And that's your basic plot. Is Will's one of the few people that actually survived his initial Demogorgon encounter after being pulled into the Upside Down, and now he's stuck in a strange and mysterious place that resembles his home. Now, if you've seen the show, you know how Will gets out of this, which doesn't leave much room for Will to, say, discover his own way out or find out any big revelations about this place. So a lot of this comic is him wandering around the Upside Down and trying to find his way out, although ultimately we do know how he does get out. So it is a little rambly with, how here's Will in this other part of the Upside Down, and it's usually he goes somewhere, maybe he'll see a sign or get close to contacting his mother, and then all of a sudden the Demogorgon will show up. Now, in order to make things a little more interesting, they do a few things, and like I talked about earlier, you get this yellow text kind of narrating and adding a little flavor to it. But oddly, even though you do have narration, you also get a whole bunch of what Will's thinking as well. I mean, not too terribly much, but when combined with the narration, you're like, okay, wow, that's a way to fit a lot of text on here, and it's kind of odd that you get both narration and thought bubbles there. In addition, you do get flashbacks to the real world, to kind of break up the story there. And, a lot of that is going to be the kids playing their Dungeons and Dragons, which, of course, if you know comics, will always find a way to tie back in to the regular world there, just by coincidence. Something that's going on in the game is similar to something that's going on in reality, so you get a bunch more of his friends, you get to see more of their games, and you do also get another scene with Will and Mike in the library, so you do get to see a little bit more of his life, and it does interrupt the constant wandering through the Upside Down. Speaking of Dungeons and Dragons, you get to see some cool fantasy and just like how Will Byers sees the game in his head. And here's a shot, Will the Wise, and then Dustin and Lucas's characters. But I don't think it ever says which one's Dustin's character and which one's Lucas's. If I had to guess, I would say that's Dustin and that's Lucas, but they don't ever really say which one's which, and then you get some enemies in the background, some like a dog and some goblins or trolls or something. I'm not 100% familiar with it. But also, towards the back of the book, you get a pretty fun illustration where you get to see Will imagining the Demogorgon from Stranger Things as the Demogorgon from Dungeons and Dragons. As one of the things people say, the Demogorgon in the game actually has two heads. So here's Will the Wise facing off with the Stranger Things, Dungeons and Dragons mixed Demogorgon. So that was a pretty cool shot to see what it would look like if it was a mix between both universes. That was pretty fun. You do get a few things that do really, help with the regular story. In passing, they reference that a few hunters have gone missing, but it's just a weird reference in the show, well, to explain that, yeah, the Demogorgon has killed more than just like a couple people, but here you actually get to see one of the hunters that the Demogorgon got, but he's not quite dead yet, and it's a 1 or 2 sentence plot point that gets more fleshed out in this novel, and I really do like that. So it's cool to see that element, and there's also a thing that fans have been asking is when Will's mom set up the Christmas lights in the house, how did Will see them? Because they're not in the Upside Down, and you do get to see that right here where you see he sees shimmery lights and these blue letters like the real world is fading in. You did get to see earlier there's this vision of his mom, so elements of the real world can fade into the Upside Down, although I don't think he sees that vision of his mom because he's got his eyes closed. But yeah, so even though the letters aren't really there, he does see a version of him. So seeing a version of these letters, it does answer a question fans have had for a while. So that's cool to see. And there are a few moments later on in this book where you see Will did have a few involvements with other parts of the story that you may have not expected him to have, although it's kind of a coincidence he happened to be at, that particular place or that particular time. But it is cool to see he had more involvement, and there's a few cool surprises I don't want to spoil. It's really cool. But overall, I don't know how much enjoyment you'd get if you hadn't seen the show, because it does get kind of rambly, and then the end is, what you would know it to be. But it means that Will doesn't do anything big and dramatic. He just has to survive. I think the best pairing for this is if you buy this book right before you do a rewatch of season 1, so you can go through and say, hey, that's where Will does this, or oh, hey, that's where that comic ties in there. Because I think they probably do tie in pretty close. And if you could, see how this or that connects, so I'd say read it right before a rewatch. But overall, this isn't, necessarily a super necessary story, but it is something pretty cool for the nerds to read and get a little bit more out of Stranger Things. This really reminds me of something that, say, Star Wars would have done, where you get a bunch of backstory or a bunch of story about some, minor detail, So I really do like that this is a, not super necessary, but for the nerds that want to know a whole bunch of stuff, this is there, and it's cool to fill in that element. After this, you'd get, 6, which is about the Hawkins lab, and Into the Fire, which is a sequel to that doesn't tie into the main book much. But then the fourth one they're going to do, which I'm really excited for, the first issue came out a bit ago, they're going to do Dustin when he's at camp, so you get to see that story. That is really cool. So overall, these comics are pretty good. I really am excited for them, and I'd recommend, if you're a Stranger Things fan, go ahead and pick this up. I had a good time with it. But yeah, a lot of narration, a lot of wondering, but it does fill in details, and I'm a nerd, and overall, that's kind of a thing that I really like. Anyway, so Stranger Things nerds, fans, but more particular nerds, I'd recommend picking this up. It's fun to see Will's perspective, fills in a little more of that element of the story. Anyway, for those of you who've stuck around, thank you for watching. To everyone who's liked and subscribed, thank you. You really are helping out the channel. I typically do a comic a week on this channel, so if that sounds like something you're interested in, I recommend sticking around. I'll also put a playlist at the end there. But other than that, I do like 95% horror movies here, so if that sounds like something you're interested in, I definitely recommend sticking around and seeing that. Anyway, thank you for watching. Have a good day, and I'll see you guys again very, very soon. Relevant playlist at the bottom. Have a good day. See you guys next time. Have a good day.